Hello and welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Sorry. Yes, so welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We are now live with Tim today. Hello, Tim. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
I am Carolina from Interchange, and we, Tim today, our second scientist within our Meet the Scientist series, as we're running up to our Into the Deep Citizen Science, Marine Citizen Science webinar that's happening on the 27th of September from 10 to 12. We'll put some more information on that on our in the comments. Also, if you cannot see this live with us right now and can't tune in, then no worries. We'll have a recording of this as well, which we'll post on our socials as well. I think without further ado, then I will leave the stage to you, Tim. And,
thank you.
Yes.
So let me introduce myself first, maybe. So my name is Tim. I'm a project manager at ARCHIPELAGOS, and ARCHIPELAGOS is a marine research institute in Greece. And we are already focused for quite some years on getting the marine environment protected. And what my special interest is and my focus is actually to getting areas protected from more or less 30 to 150 meter depth. Because in Greece and in the wider Mediterranean, there are the lovely coralligenous habitats. And coralligenous are kind of cold water corals. Not completely, but let's make it easy. It's like a cold water coral. And it's a unique habitat we can only find in the Mediterranean. And I'm really passionate to get that protected. The interesting thing is, if you have questions, I'll put the questions in the chat. But the interesting thing is coralligenous is protected by law. And for example, in the Western Mediterranean, we know it is as well then more or less protected because we know where we can find it. But if we move towards the Eastern Mediterranean, we see that the coralligenous habitats are starting to grow at deeper depths. And at depths where we cannot come by diving. So we really need to use other tools like ROVs, those very fancy underwater drones, to monitor the coralligenous habitats. And that's a very time-consuming and very costly activity. So since a few years, more and more cheap ROVs are on the market, relatively cheap, still few thousands of euros. But with that, we were able to start going to the depths of 40, 50, 100 meter depth. And then we found along the Greek coastlines amazing habitats. And that was happening in 2021 by chance, by luck. We got a very small research grant from Pure Ocean, very nice foundation that supports young scientists, people that really want to do exploratory science. It's kind of risky what they do because it's not sure if everything works out. But at the end, it worked out for us. We found way more than only coralligenous. We found, for example, as well, black coral forest, kind of forest, 1.5 meter high, has more than football field size. And that's, for example, an area habitat for sharks and rays. So that's where we started in 2021. We were able to monitor, map those very interesting areas near the island of Furni. The island of Furni is an area very close to our research institute. And as well, we did it thanks to artisanal fishermen. So the very small scale fishermen that go with boats of few meters on the seas. They are not so destructive, but they really know from bycatch where they can find all those beautiful marine life. And they told us the locations where we had to go to. Based on all that kind of experience, we start collecting a really great source of underwater footage, hours and hours. And we're still collecting hours and hours of footage. But then the big question is, what can you do as a scientist with all this footage? Because it takes hours, it takes days, maybe months to analyze. And that's a huge challenge. And we were not the only organization facing this challenge. Together with us in the project are 4 other partners, and they're facing similar challenges. They were collecting very fast, huge amounts of data, and we don't know where to go with it, how to analyze it, because I'm quite expensive and it takes me a lot of time to do it by myself. And I have still much more work to do because at the end we want to get those areas protected. So there's as well a lot of work needs to go into that. So Into the Deep came as a present for us, more or less. It's such a nice project because it's not us anymore that start analyzing all those footage, but we give tasks to you, to the citizens. You start annotating fish, fishing gear, lobsters in our case, for example. You start annotating very specific species. And thanks to that, we know, for example, what we can find in our areas. Still, we're checking all the footage by ourselves to find out if there are very important things we're missing. But that's just like, for us now, seconds of work. We go quickly through, while the important and time-consuming annotation tasks are done by the citizens. So in that way, we're really happy with Bigger Party. Bigger Party is the platform where you can start annotating. Well, I keep chatting, but if there are questions, just put them in the chat. Yeah, and then is indeed now there the first question. If we already found some good results from the citizen science, yes. So what we really see is that in this case, we're just exploring how you can support conservation. And the first thing is we really can see that you are able to annotate very correctly what we ask you. So we ask, for example, can you annotate lobsters? And we see, for example, that the lobsters are in a very specific part of our area, really in the corallogenous habitats, while we show you more. Sometimes you see behind me, thanks to the very nice artificial intelligence, the sea pen. The sea pen is a real photo from underwater, and that's another habitat. And over there we see, for example, no lobsters, and no one annotated it there. But we really see that specific species are in very specific habitats, and that's what citizens start annotating so far. Just, we wanted to understand, okay, what you can contribute to. And then the next question is, why do we think that incorporating citizen science into our research is so useful? Well, first of all, there's a lot of data to analyze. And on the other hand, what is interesting in our case, we use citizens. I told you we use fishermen to find out where those habitats are. But on the other hand, we like to give the data back as well to citizens. So it's not that we want to take it and just use it by ourselves and do by ourselves analyze. We really would like to share it continuously with the community. It's as well creating a kind of awareness, because if it is only us that use this data, people still don't understand why it's important. And if we show how beautiful those areas are, that you see all the yellow and the red and the green sponges and the sea pans and the black coral, then you start understanding why we need to get this protected. Another question is, what would be our advice to other scientists about incorporating citizen science into their research? I think it's really a kind of less time-consuming methodology. So citizens can take a lot of work out of our hands, especially if you have to analyze hundreds of images. If you design the research in a very good and targeted way, citizens contribute to it. On the other hand, when you work with citizen science, we need to realize, well, that we need to give them something back. So often people take only information from citizen science. That's what I said too. We take from fishermen this data, but on the other hand, we would like to give them back so they see actually their data. And at the end, you need to stay in contact with them from, okay, where does the data go to? What is the end product? And if you keep that in mind, then citizen science is a very powerful tool, which can greatly support science. What is then the most difficult thing about communicating your science and research? First of all, very easy. Obvious, I'm not Greek and I'm working in Greece. So communicating with Greek people is already very difficult. But it's what is even more difficult, and that's wherever you are, with whoever you work, make it very easy to understand. Scientists and researchers, we are constantly working in those environments. We use very difficult words. Sometimes how we call habitats or species, it's not how the common people call them. We really need to downscale, make things very easy, but show as well the positive things why we do it as well. What are the negative things if we don't do it? So we show what protection will do, but we show as well what will happen if we don't do protection. So, for example, we have footage of trawler damage. So where the trawlers went over collagenous habitats, and then people start realizing it's affecting the biodiversity. But at the end, citizens are not stupid. So be honest in what you communicate and what you share with them, what you show to them. Next, interesting question. Why is it important to study this area in particular? Well, what we found around Furni, it's a really nice, interesting area in the eastern part of the Aegean Sea, is that it's a kind of biodiversity hotspot. So everywhere, actually the seafloor is relatively flat, so around 70 to 100 meter depth, are there small seamounts, 40 to 60 meter high. And those seamounts, it seems like, but we're not sure that they have volcanic origin, and they host an insane biodiversity. In 4 dives, 5 dives, we counted over 300 different species. And the interesting thing is, it's not only that they host those species, but it's well the nursery, the breeding area for very iconic and important species. Think about sharks, think about rays, but on the other hand, it's well a lot of food comes from those places. And that's why we really want to get those areas protected. Ideally, we get this entire area protected. And then people say, hey, but there are as well fishermen. Well, the artisanal fishermen, they are often still allowed. But the bottom touching fishing activities are not allowed anymore. But they can stay on the sides of it, outside it. Because if this habitat is completely healthy, then there will be so much fish productivity over there that there's an overspill. So they will go to the nearby areas, and that's where the fishermen can still catch them easily. And so we need to maintain in the Aegean Sea, but as well, I think, in the wider Med and in the entire oceans, a kind of protected places where wildlife, marine life, fish can stay and maintain themselves. What made you decide to be a marine researcher? Well, that's fun. I'm actually not a marine researcher from origin. I'm a geologist, and I started studying geology. And for a long time, I was focused on working for large oil companies. But then halfway throughout my study, I realized, shit, something is happening here in the world. And we really need to change. So at that time, I started focusing more on environmental management. A relatively easy step because I had a background and I didn't have to do some other education. But then I had to do an internship, and during my internship, I got in touch with seagrass, and I fell in love with seagrass. And that was the first time I started realizing this is fun and I want to move on with it. And as a geologist, I was focusing a lot on geomorphology, and that's how I got more and more into the interest in the marine landscape. So if you ask me something about individual species, I don't understand that much. But if you ask me something about how the landscape function, then I know way more. That's where my interest is. And I like that on terrestrial, but that's on land. But it's way more fascinating, everything below the water, because we don't know that much about it. It's relatively difficult to explore. And I really like to collect remote data. So collecting with drones, or for example, with underwater drones, or with sonar, so sound signals in the water, or even remote sensing, so satellites. That's actually what I like. So I like to work with large quantities of data and trying to understand how does the marine environment look like. So I made quite a journey to get here, but I really, really enjoyed it. And then what is most interesting part of my job? I think people think scientists, they are just working on their own topic and that's it. That's absolutely not the case. I really like to work with a lot of different people from different organizations worldwide. While still we have all the same passion. We love our marine environment. We love everything underwater. And that's what we share. And that's very fascinating because we really want to understand what's happening there, and we don't understand it. And what I like, for example, is especially the exploratory part. So some people go in detail to study one species, but I really like to explore, understand the large things that are happening. I always say it feels sometimes more like Jacques Cousteau. When I'm on a boat and we go to an unexplored area, we don't know what's going to happen, but based on some interviews with citizens, we understand where there's perhaps some interesting things to find. And then we just go down with the tools and try to find what's there. And if you see that on the screen, the first shots of 100-meter depth, and you see, for example, the sea pen behind me. Yeah, it's literally fascinating. It's extremely nice. So that are the days that I really like. Then a very nice next question is, of course, how does the day in the life of Tim as a scientist look like? Let's say 70-80% of my life is just office work, analyzing data, playing with codes, programming, writing reports, papers. That's just a general day as a scientist, especially when you get a little bit older, become higher up, then it becomes even more. But the other part, I still like to do field work. So as soon as I have the opportunities to do field work, I like to go in the field and to do amazing surveys wherever I am. So it's not that I'm exclusively bounded to Greece. So wherever I am, I will do field work. But at the end, I realize more and more that I like data. So I like to collect data in the field and then spend a lot of time to analyze it and get, for example, in this case, protection in place, or make very interesting articles that help us to understand better the environment. So yeah, sometimes people think scientists like Tim, they are continuously in the field. No, but we need to be in the field every now and then at very nice places, Fourni, other places in Greece, and sometimes it's just hard office life. Next question is then, what advice would you give to a person who's thinking about entering the marine science field? Just follow your passion. It's really easy. If you have a passion for marine life, go on with it. Follow it. If you like to dive, there are many nice opportunities with diving. If you like, for example, like me, more data part, then it's possible too. Follow your heart and start looking, for example, for small research grants, because they will support you in achieving it. And at the end, it's indeed that large research institutes, they have very expensive ships, have the most expensive ROVs or underwater tools. But even with the small scale, the relatively cheap open source products, we can already do amazing science. And that's the good thing of this perhaps decade. It's more and more about open science, open tools, so it becomes much more easy to do this. Well, that brings me slowly to an end, because I think I started with explaining what we do, what we analyzed, why it's so fascinating, why we should use more citizen science. So there's...
Hi. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tim. That was really, really great, and you answered some really great questions as well. So just want to reiterate that for anybody who missed this, or if you couldn't catch the live stream, we'll have it on, or you missed the beginning part, we'll have this recordings posted. And join us for our next live streams. We'll keep you updated when those are coming up. And once again, Tim, thank you so much for your time and sharing your exciting stories and good advices too.
Thanks very much, everyone.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.